Hey everybody, Bastion here. It's been a while, but I'm back with another tutorial. This time I'm going to be going over how to sample vinyl records for your music. I know it can seem a little intimidating before you get started, and yes, you do need some equipment for this, including a vinyl record player, obviously, perhaps a preamp depending on the player you're using, an audio interface, and the assorted cables that you need for all of these. So I'm going to be touching on all of that briefly, making a few recommendations, then showing you how I go about sampling. I use some of these samples on my original track Body from my brand new release Body Lifted. It's a 2-track single. Go buy that, stream that, wherever you like to listen to music. There will be a link in the description below. Also keep in mind that there are a million ways to do anything in music production. I'm sure that there are some things that I could be doing better. So go ahead, feel free to drop comments below, recommendations. I'm excited to learn what I could be doing better as well. Here's a quick rundown of the equipment we're going to be using to sample vinyl records. So my turntable is the Project Debut Carbon. I think I have the previous version and it's fantastic. You're paying for the design a bit and also really high quality carbon fiber tone arm and all this stuff. Don't let price hold you back unless you're audiophile, gotta have the best. Something like Audio-Technica is probably fine. If you're going to use a turntable that does not have a built-in preamp, you're going to need to buy an external phono preamp. I recommend this company Turntable Lab. They're NYC based. It looks like they don't have the one that I bought. If you're not sure which one to get, just call them up. They're super knowledgeable. Lastly, in order to record the audio that you're sampling into your DAW, you're going to need an audio interface. I use the SSL2 by Solid State Logic. They're a very reputable brand in the industry. They're mainly known for building mixing boards inside of professional recording studios, I believe. This was their first audio interface. It's perhaps a step above the Scarlett 2i2, but not up there with the Apollo 1 knob. It's somewhere in the middle. I've been happy with it. I like the big volume knob and the 4K saturation button, which I'm actually using right now on my voice. Now I'm going to flip the camera around and show you guys how to set up this equipment so that you can start sampling vinyl records. Okay, so apologies ahead of time for any wires or shaky camera work, but here we go. I've got my turntable conveniently tucked away right here just in case I want to sample something. I want it to be as easy and quick as possible for me to do so. Here you can see the RCA cables plugged into the back of my turntable. If you're going to buy these separately, just note that it has to have this ground wire, which fits into this little sort of screw thing that you unscrew and you stick it on there and then you tighten it up. Here's my preamp. It's a little bit dusty. Don't worry about that. I've got the RCAs coming into the audio input of the phono preamp. The ground wire is connected right there. This is then run into my audio interface with a pair of RCA to XLR cables, this red guy right here. So I'm currently using this channel for the microphone. So this is where the left channel would be plugged into. Lastly, you'll have to connect your audio interface to your computer via a USB cord. All right, now I'm going to pop the record onto the turntable. Normally I would grab my vinyl brush and dust it off. Now I'll turn the turntable on with the on switch down here. Projects have this nice little lever over here that will lower it down nice and gently, as you can see. Now the record is playing, but we're not hearing anything yet. So I'm gonna go into Ableton and make sure that my input is set up correctly. For audio input device, I'm going to select my interface and press record. Now the signal is coming into Ableton, but you can see it's very low, and that's because I forgot to turn my preamp on. So I'll just turn that on and you'll hear the difference. Okay, so this is actually a really good learning experience. So the reason why it was all buzzy like that was because I forgot to reconnect the ground wire when I was showing you guys the RCA cables behind the turntable. Without getting into technical details, that's what the ground wire is for. It's to prevent that buzzing sound. Now that I've reconnected that, we can start sampling. Before I jump into the project file for Body and show you how I actually use these samples in my track, I'm going to show you how to save these samples so that it's easy for you to use them in your productions. So first of all, if you ever want to find where these are located, you can just right click and go down to Show in Browser. And that will make them appear right over here in the recorded folder. Now, you don't really want to mess with these files because if you ever want to open this session back up, you're going to want these to be in place or else you're going to have to re-find all of these samples that you recorded. So instead, what you might want to do is Command J or consolidate. This will create a new file for this clip, which you can then right-click and show in browser again, and they'll appear down here, processed, consolidate. That's the file. I suggest renaming these clips. You might even want to create a separate folder where you save all of your samples that you record inside of your bigger sample library to make it easy to find them later. The way I see it, there are two ways to approach the technical process of sampling. The first is what I call active sampling, and this is the old school method. Early sequencers like the Akai MPC-60 had very limited sample memory, so producers had to carefully select only a handful of clips from each song that they wanted to use while making a beat. This approach requires actively listening to the record and only recording the bits that grab your ear as you go along. Even though this approach was born of necessity, it was literally the only way producers could do it due to technical constraints, there's still value in taking this approach today. It may seem a bit more tedious in the moment, but you'll end up collecting fewer samples, only the ones you really think you're going to use. Limiting your options can help to avoid choice overload during songwriting, which might save a little time. You're also using less computer storage, which might matter to you if you're working on an older laptop. The second approach, which I call passive sampling, is enabled by modern technology. Today, we have virtually unlimited storage. This gives us more flexibility. Passive sampling involves recording and saving the whole record in your DAW. This allows you to do other things and passively listen to the record as it's recording. It helps to stay near your computer though, so that you can use markers to point out the spots you might want to go back and sample later on. Then, once the record is saved in your DAW, you can listen through, skip around, and save as many samples as you want as you find them. The obvious advantage here is the convenience of working with one big digital audio file. Instead of having to manually move the tone arm around and press record for each individual sample, you can quickly consolidate samples as you go. Also, because you're saving the whole record, you don't have to feel pressured to grab every sample in that one session. You can always go back and find more samples later on. When I first started sampling vinyl records, I preferred the passive sampling method. It just felt easier to me. Recently though, I've come to appreciate the old school, active sampling method. I find that it actually saves a lot of time because I don't grab samples from every song on every record. The physical process of skipping through the tracks using the tone arm is kind of fun. And because the manual process is slightly more tedious, it forces you to be more disciplined and only grab samples that you really think you're going to use. Sometimes if a record is an absolute goldmine, there's stuff on every track you might want to grab, and maybe if you have some chores you need to get done, the passive sampling method might be the move. I would encourage you to try out both, see which one works better for you. Let everyone know which method you prefer in the comments, or if you know any other methods that are worth considering. Either way, I encourage you to be organized and develop a system for saving these samples. When you get in the flow writing a song, you don't want to get distracted trying to dig around in your sample library, trying to find those samples that you recorded months ago. And there you have it. That's pretty much all you need to know to start sampling vinyl records. Be sure to check out part 2 of this video where I dive into this session for my track Body, show you how I used these exact samples in that track. I'll cover some really cool mixing techniques, the arrangement of the track. Yeah, be sure to check that out. Thanks again. I go by Bastion. Links to my music are in the description below. Leave a comment, hit subscribe, all that good stuff, and go check out my new release, Body Lifted, on all platforms. Thanks again. Till next time, Bastion out.